If making money is your entire idea of financial freedom, you've only discovered one tiny piece of the whole puzzle. But don't worry, because the rest of the pieces come when you learn how to handle your money God's way, even if you don't believe in the same God I do, because God's way, unlike the hustle culture we live in, prioritizes the freedom over the finances. It is to free you from your finances. That's kind of the whole point of financial freedom, right? And when you do this properly, which is what I hope to show you today, you'll find that there are two missing pieces. Number one, we have to define our freedom. Number two, we have to define our mission, and this will get you closer to that kind of freedom as well as make it last. So we'll start with that first one. How should we define our freedom? Well, this is how I would do it. Freedom is your ability to make decisions out of faith instead of fear. That is freedom. And I want to teach you three godly universal laws that will lead you closer to this freedom. There's the law of gratitude, the law of generosity, and the law of gratification. And hear me when I say this. These laws, they will play a role in your life, but it's how well you understand each of them that will determine whether it's a positive role or a negative role. This is the difference between you coming out with an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset. So put the distractions away. This is a free video, so let's maximize our time. Law number one, the law of gratitude says, I am worth more than my fear. Now, I'm sure you can agree with me on this one. When most people think of coming up with some kind of wealth strategy, they hardly ever add gratitude as an actual step in their strategy, but gratitude applies in an extremely practical way that you might not realize. People much smarter than me have discovered that gratitude inside your brain cannot coexist at the same time as the effects of fear. It's one or the other, it cannot be both. So in other words, gratitude is your direct solution to fear. And if we are trying to act out of faith instead of fear, being grateful for what you do have, being grateful for the journey, is your answer. It is much more productive to be grateful than to stress out about a job that you absolutely hate. I understand though, sometimes the only thing paying your bills is that job that you hate, right? So what I'm not suggesting is that you quit your job without a plan. However, I am suggesting you look a little bit deeper, because another separate study from some more smart people found that there are generally two groups of people when it comes to their finances. Group number one, when they were left to make financial decisions as they normally would, it almost always involved a lot of negative emotions, or at least a ton of confusion. But the second group, group number two, they were prompted to make the same financial decisions, but before they made those decisions, they were prompted to feel gratitude of any level. And what these researchers found was that the first group, number one, they were deciding to spend their money instead of saving their money. But group number two, they decided to do pretty much the exact opposite. They were more likely to save instead of spend for their long term. This is obviously a huge difference in behavior, so of course they had to ask why. What they found was that people who experience more gratitude in their lives are generally just happier people, and more importantly, they have better impulse control, because fear and stress cloud your judgment, but gratitude is your direct solution to those things. When you are feeling good while doing something that generally causes those negative emotions, you're able to assess the situation with more clarity. Now, this is obviously important for a lot of different reasons, but when it comes to financial freedom and building wealth, you are dealing with a game of decades, not days. So if you don't give yourself the chance to see past the short term, making more money will not give you lasting financial freedom. If you make gratitude just as much of a requirement as something like budgeting or something like working, you're taking a huge step towards a lasting strategy. Now, number two, the law of generosity says, I am worth more than my dollar. And of course, you can be generous with other things than your dollar, like your time and energy or information. But let me put this into perspective for you. I'm going to read you something, and then I have a question for you. The generous will prosper. Those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. Now, we will talk about that, but here's the question, because one of the most common things I hear from people who think they're being cool and witty anytime they hear faith and finance in the same sentence is, well, if you were actually smart with your money, you wouldn't be giving 10% to a church. You would keep the tithe for yourself. But here's the thing. If we're after financial freedom, what is more financially freeing than detaching your self-worth from your dollar? This is generosity. That's exactly what it allows you to do. It's not about the dollar amount that you give. You don't have to tithe. It's about the law of detachment. The generous will prosper not because they're amazing human beings, even though it's a great thing. It's because their self worth is not tied to their dollar, and neither is their faith. To further prove this point, think back to a time where you really wanted something to the point where it was all you thought about. Maybe you wanted this person to be your girlfriend or your boyfriend, or maybe you just really wanted to make a sale for your business, but no matter how hard you kept trying, the outcome you were chasing seemed to be running away from you as fast as it possibly could. Eventually, though, you stopped caring as much, and all of a sudden, the result you were fighting so hard for is now just sitting in front of you ready to be picked. I feel like this happens a lot and people don't really understand it. What actually happened there? I'm sure you experienced this at some point in your life, whether you realized it at that time or not. What actually happened there? Let me tell you something. You didn't stop caring as much, and it didn't just all of a sudden get easier. What you did do, though, was you unclench your fist a little bit and you relax your shoulders and you start breathing a little bit easier. So you started to move a little bit more efficiently. And because of that, you started to move with a little bit more confidence. You want results, you want financial freedom, then learn to detach, learn generosity, because your current financial position does not determine your self-worth. You are worth more than your dollar. And this actually leads very well into law number 3. The law of gratification says, I am worth more than my results. And all 3 of these laws go very well together. But I believe this one is more relevant today than it's ever been. We live in a world today where everything has to happen now. And if it doesn't happen now, then it's just not worth my time. Plain and simple, it's not worth it. But if we're going to handle our money God's way to reach financial freedom that lasts, this is a question that you need to ask yourself. If God is all powerful, if he wants us to succeed, why does he make us wait? Why doesn't he just give me $1 million right now? Because he can, so then why doesn't he? Well, there's 2 reasons. Number 1, if he was a God of instant gratification, if he gave you whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted, whether it was good or bad for you, he would not be a loving creator. He would just be your little genie in a bottle. Oh, but I prayed for $1 million last night. Why isn't it in my bank account yet? Because, ma'am, sir, you've done terrible with the little that you do have. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given. Money amplifies what is already there. So your bad habits are not just going to be made better with more money. They're going to get worse. So your goal, if you don't know how to handle what you do have now, your goal is to create good habits with what you currently have. But reason number 2, your faith, it means nothing until it's actually tested. Think about it. If he gave you whatever you wanted, exactly when you wanted it, again, whether it was good or bad for you, that requires no faith. It's in the period of waiting where your faith and endurance actually become necessary and begin to actually develop. As I said before, wealth is a game of decades, not days. So this is exactly what you need. You need to exercise your faith. You need to exercise your endurance. But be careful, because some people, they think they're being faithful when they're, I'm in a period of waiting. But there's 2 different types of waiting as well. Okay, there's 2 different types. There's passive waiting, and then there's active waiting. Passive waiting is you sitting around doing nothing. Active waiting is about you stacking your efforts, building compound growth, getting better 2% every single day, because you got to understand, a journey of 1,000,000 steps still starts with 1. Your first step is not going to put you at the top of the mountain, but that does not mean you are worth less. That does not mean you are a failure. You are worth more than your results. Now we're going to move on to the second missing puzzle piece, but with the 3 laws that I gave you defining our freedom, you have almost everything you need to create some kind of lasting strategy. All you got to do now is get to work. And what I hope you've noticed is that your faith, when you apply it and implement it into your life, it's not a blindfold like many people try to make it out to be. It actually empowers you to live a more full and free life. And that's what we're after, right? But to complete this puzzle, we just got to define our mission. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, of course, is very simple. It is the way in which you contribute to the world, your family, or community with the freedom that you have, which, by the way, is why we start with understanding our freedom. There aren't any laws for this one, but I am going to read you something to help you understand what to do before you start your mission, what to do now that you have started, and what to do as you're more established for later. God has given each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. Do you have the gift of speaking? Then speak. Do you have the gift of helping others? Then do it with all the strength and energy that God provides. Then everything you do will bring glory to God. So before you begin, Look at the gifts and the skills that you already have and don't complicate it. Are you good at speaking? Are you good at listening? You got an eye for detail? Are you good at finding problems and creating solutions, which, by the way, is my gift? That's what I do for people. It may not seem like a special gift, but that's because you aren't fully utilizing them yet. It is a constantly developing process. And for me, because I'm good at identifying problems, a lot of people might look at that and they say, oh, that's just a fancy way of saying you're way too critical. And maybe that's true. Maybe that is. But when I pair it with the fact that I'm also very good at providing solutions to problems people never saw in the first place, I have a fully operational business. It's an amazing gift. And just so you're aware, that's all business is. It's you using your gifts to serve other people. There's always a problem though, right? And the problem with this one is that you may be struggling to differentiate between your mission and your passion. You've trapped yourself in a cycle that only leads to confusion because it wasn't a cycle meant for you. This is what that looks like. I am passionate about sports, therefore I must be a professional athlete. And I might be oversimplifying, but how did we make that jump? Yes, you are good at sports. Yes, you enjoy sports. I do too. Everybody does. Why do you need to be a professional athlete to pursue that passion? You've trapped yourself in a box, and when you don't become a professional athlete, or maybe you do become a professional athlete and then you find it's not as fulfilling as you thought it would be, you're confused because it was the only route that you gave yourself. If you take anything away from this video, I mean, hopefully you take everything, but if you only take one, here it is. There's more than one way to accomplish the same thing. My point is your passion and your mission, they can be the same, but they're usually not, and there's nothing wrong with that. God's gifts are not limited by industry. They come with creative control, so use it. Go learn something new and try different things. That's all I got for you today. I appreciate you staying in. The only way we're going to grow together is if you sub so you can see more videos, and if you send it to somebody new so I can grow as well. I appreciate you staying. I'll see you in the next video.